It's midway through May, and just 2 weeks ago, this whole area was a mass of wildflowers in bloom. We showed you quite a few of those in the last video, but the difference in just 2 weeks is quite remarkable. Most of the flowers have died down. There's a lot more grasses coming up, and everything is very much drier. And that's quite strange in itself, you know, because we had 2 thunderstorms just the other day. So less than 48 hours ago, this was a torrential period of rain that soaked everything. But if you look at the ground now, it's really, really dry again. And strangely, despite all that rain coming down, you know, it doesn't make that much difference to the vegetation. The vegetation seems to have a clock that continues regardless of the rain, so it doesn't seem to make a big difference. So it's a very interesting thing when you look at this environment to see just how quickly water on the ground evaporates or soaks in. It doesn't hang around very long. So this is, of course, an arid environment, and it's events like that that really bring home just what arid really means. When we travel up in the hills to fairly undisturbed Testudo Greica habitat, one of the things which is incredibly noticeable by its total absence are fruits. There simply are no native fruiting plants in season here, or even exist here in many cases. Most of the plants that we associate sometimes with Mediterranean habitats, figs and pomegranates, grapes, all of these things are introduced from other areas, often from the Middle East and that area. So they do very well here, and they have been cultivated here since the Phoenicians and the Romans brought them here. But they are not, and never have been, part of the diet of tortoises in this area. Now, tortoises will eat them, for example, in later autumn, if they encounter a fallen fig. I've no doubt that they eat it. But this is a recent phenomena. And by recent, I mean within the last few thousand years. Before that, and tortoises existed for countless millennia before that time, they did not exist here. So it's certainly not part of their native diet. We do know what the effects of feeding fruits to tortoises are. We've written a really detailed paper about it, and I'm going to put a link in down below so you can go and read it for yourself. There is a lot, if you'll forgive the pun, to digest in that. But what we know for sure is that very high sugar-rich diets, highly fermentable, highly digestible diets cause the digestive tract to accelerate. That can cause many, many problems with the acid balance, the pH balance of the gut. It can cause them to pass through things much faster than they normally would, because normally they're eating extremely low sugar content, very, very high fiber, hard to digest foods. That's their natural diet. And these things are the precise opposite. So they have very serious negative effects. They may not manifest immediately always, though sometimes they do, because there are cases where tortoises have been gorging on things like that and died as a result of all the excess gas generated internally. But it's more insidious than that. It tends to push them into long-term digestive tract damage, for one thing, and it can also cause proliferation of flagellate organisms and other parasitic organisms in the gut as well. And one of the most common problems when they're on these diets of fruits and, you know, vegetables rather than their natural graze is that they begin to develop metabolic bone disease. They get a type of osteoporosis as a result of the dietary imbalance, because these things are super high in phosphorus content and they are incredibly low in calcium content. So There are all manner of reasons there why it truly isn't a good idea to do this. One funny but still accurate analogy that I often use is to imagine that aliens from another world are visiting planet Earth and they want to see what young humans eat. So they pop down and they see that they're at pizza places, they're at burger joints, they are eating ice cream and chocolate, and back they go and they say, yes, we know what these creatures eat. And here you go, pizzas, burgers, ice creams, fries, that sort of stuff. And then they begin to wonder when those humans that they're attempting to breed on this other planet start to develop all kinds of health problems, heart disease, obesity, bad teeth, and diabetes. Well, the same thing applies to tortoises, because many of the things that people believe that they eat, they don't eat, and they are very, very bad for their health. Fast forward another 2 weeks. We're at the very end of May, beginning of June, and there have been further changes in this environment even during that very short period. There are now very few flowers still out, very little edible vegetation or fresh green vegetation on the ground for tortoises to eat, and also the temperatures are rising really quickly. Whereas at the beginning of May, at the end of April, it was not uncommon to find tortoises out and basking and grazing as late as midday or 1 p.m, even a bit later on some occasions. Now you won't really find any tortoises out much past about 10 in the morning, because by midday the ground surface temperatures can be well over 40 degrees Celsius and the air temperatures are in the low 30s Celsius. Some days they can be 33 or 34, and those temperatures are just too high for this species to be active. They are seeking retreat, and as this month winds up and we move into June, that period of retreat will become longer and longer, and the temperatures will continue to rise higher and higher, and eventually tortoises will transition into a full period of estivation, which will not end until the hoped for rains arrive sometime in the autumn. May is also the month when we see the females digging their nests, depositing their eggs, which will then incubate over summer underground until the rains come in the autumn, which will prompt the emergence from the nests.